At this point, they might have concluded that their transformation from Eastern European Jews into Americans was complete. But history intervened to remind them of their origins. It was difficult for the Moguls to entirely abandon their Jewishness while the Nazis were persecuting their European kin. Some of the Hollywood Jews could not ignore these events. In 1939, a group of stars, including John Garfield, Edward G. Robinson, and their spokesman, Melvin Douglas, risked their celebrity status to speak out against Hitler.
That all economic connections between the United States of America and Nazi Germany be totally severed, until such time as Germany is willing to re-enter the family of nations in accordance with the humane principles of international law.
Though Carl Laemmle was no longer studio head at this time, he joined the protesters and signed their declaration. Both Laemmle and Harry Warner were active in sponsoring Jewish refugees from Europe. And in 1939, Warner made this anti-fascist speech to the American Legion.
Drive them out. Make America unsafe for those who seek to tear down what others have built through the generations since 1776. Drive them from their secret meeting places. Destroy their insidious propaganda machines. Drive out their Bunds and their Leagues, their clans and black legions, the silver shirts, the black shirts, and the dirty shirts. Help keep America for those who believe in America.
In response to Hollywood's limited anti-fascist stand, former U.S. Ambassador to Britain, Joseph P. Kennedy, flew to Los Angeles. At a secret meeting, he told the Moguls that American Jews would be blamed if the United States were dragged into war with Germany. He warned them to stop agitating against Nazism. The Kennedy meeting had its desired effect.
At the end of the 1930s, as the shadows of war are haunting Europe, the Jews in Hollywood are very much afraid of warning American audiences of those dangers because it looks as though it's a special Jewish angle. It looks parochial, it looks limited, and therefore it's difficult to make anti-Nazi movies in Hollywood because the Jews don't want to stand out.
The Jewish fear of standing out was expressed through another icon that would make its way to the screen.
Superman was invented by two Jewish kids in the late 1930s, when there also was a worldwide upsurge in very frightening anti-Semitism. Superman is discovered like Moses in the bulrushes. He's an immigrant from another planet who comes to Earth. He has his identity as a mild-mannered intellectual, but really underneath he's the man of steel. I think that's a very suggestive Jewish fantasy. It's almost as if he's passing all the time.
While the Jew felt like an alien in America, Superman was a real alien.
This looks like a job for Superman.
Yet incredibly, he is the only superhero who manages to keep his identity secret without wearing a mask. Only Jews could have created a story based on the premise that all one needs is a Gentile demeanor to hide in plain sight.
I bet you recognize him. Why, of course you recognize him. It's Adenoid Hinkle, the Fooey of Tomania.
Like Superman, the Hollywood moguls were unwilling to risk their Gentile disguise. As a result, only 2 anti-Nazi films were made before the war. Charlie Chaplin financed and made the classic film The Great Dictator. Chaplin was neither Jewish nor American, so he didn't share the fears of the Hollywood Jews. Warner Brothers made Confessions of a Nazi Spy only after their Jewish representative in Germany was beaten to death by Hitler's henchmen. Incredibly, this Hollywood film about the dangers of Nazism makes no reference to either Jews or anti-Semitism. All this changed on December the 7th, 1941, with the attack on the U.S. Navy at Pearl Harbor by Hitler's Japanese allies. Now, instead of telling Hollywood to keep quiet, the U.S. government began pushing them to fulfill their duty and make patriotic war movies.
All that noise you hear isn't static. It's death coming to London. Yes, they're coming here now. You can hear the bombs falling on the streets and the homes. Don't tune me out. Hang on a while. This is a big story, and you're part of it. It's too late to do anything here now except stand in the dark and let them come. It's as if the lights were all out everywhere, except in America. Keep those lights burning. Cover them with steel. Ring them with guns. Build a canopy of battleships and bombing planes around them. Hello, America. Hang on to your
It's
lights.
a wonderful time for the Hollywood Jews. I mean, here were a group of Jews who had spent their lives seeking legitimacy and seeking to be embraced by America. And World War II finally affords them that opportunity to be embraced officially. They are now real patriots.
Will you check with MGM and see if they'll postpone the Hedy Lamarr picture so we can use her for the bond drive?
Surely. RKO just okayed Cary Grant. We'll hear from Paramount later today on Colbert and Dick Powell.
Oh, swell. Double check with Boyer and Abbott and Costello, will you? Right away, yeah.
The priority on Irene Dunn has just come through. She'll leave on the 16th.
Fine, fine.
The motion picture industry today is supplying without charge all its newest and best feature films to the U.S. War Department Overseas Film Division.
The movies were a tremendous propagandistic tool during this time. They set up camps for the soldiers to come back in where movies were shown 24 hours a day because that impressed the soldiers with what they were fighting for.
It was the beginning of an unprecedented alliance between Washington and Hollywood.
And you swear that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the United States of America. I do.
For the first time, Hollywood's message was adopted by the government. A democratic state could not send minorities, immigrants, and the poor to die for an America which excluded them. So, if the enemies were fascist, the American army had to be portrayed as caring and sharing.
I want you to feel free to ask questions, even embarrassing ones. Come to me with suggestions. We're going to be more than officers and men in this. We're going to be comrades. What I eat, you will eat. Where I sleep, you will sleep. I will take you into my confidence whenever it's possible before going into battle. We'll have a meeting in which I'll explain our plans and objectives so that each of you can make a more intelligent contribution to the result. Afterward, we'll have another meeting to criticize the way in which the operation was conducted. We'll fight and endure and win together.
You would have equal opportunity foxholes. If you go back and look at those movies, there was always one Jewish character who was never presented as Jewish, but he was Cohen or Schwartz from Brooklyn. There was always one black character, too.
Wesley Epps, Private, 3rd Engineer Battalion.
The American Army during the Second World War was not integrated except in Hollywood movies. And the Office of War Information was very eager to keep our enemies from making capital out of any sort of problems in America. So they didn't want movies that had any racial tensions of any sort.
Corporal Jake Feingold, 4th Chemical Company, USA.
While 6 million Jews died in Europe, their